Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of an Evolved Review. Don't call it a comeback. I am your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and as you'll notice, it's just our beautiful voices today. I am joined once again by the man himself. It has been way, way too long. Caleb Stovall, welcome back to the program, sir.
Yeah, man, it has been. It's been way too long, man. How you been?
Oh man, I have been insanely busy between working the shoot job, um, still running the production team at Viral Pro, and they pretty much run themselves. I'm just there to supervise
Yeah.
because they're all very good. And then so working, writing because I am writing a book. I am also
I did hear about that.
so that's happening. That's going according to plan. I'm planning to have a rough draft completed by the end of this year, and I'm on track to make that happen.
Oh, well, that's awesome, man. Awesome.
So there's that, and then just everything else in the universe. So, but
It's
here
been
we are.
everything these days.
That's right. We're back. I had put out an episode earlier this week, which was
I
just
heard it was with someone I never thought would actually appear on this program.
we absolutely broke the internet with that. The reaction on social media wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be, so I was like, well, maybe no one cares about this. But the listens have been really, really high. I think a lot of people were absolutely shocked by that, and that's what I wanted. It was not something that anybody thought they were going to see.
Yeah.
So I had people messaging me being like, well, congratulations on coming back with a bang because nobody thought that was going to happen. So, um,
Even I was just like, what? Like,
well, we didn't tell anyone. Only Tim and I knew that it was going to happen. We didn't tell a single soul that we were going to do it. And then, while we were recording it, I messaged Joe Brown, friend of the show,
yep.
and I said, "Man, you are not going to believe the episode I'm about to drop." And he was like, "Okay, I can't wait." And then I sent him the link, and he was like, I mean, just his reaction was hilarious. He was just like, "Well, I'm definitely interested now." But I had a really good time sitting down and talking to Tim, and looking forward to probably doing it again.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Absolutely. That's. I mean, again, that's incredible that you were able to get him on here. And plus, he's so knowledgeable, about the wrestling business. He knows a lot. He's done a lot, and so have you. So it's two great wrestling minds getting together.
and the funny thing is, I think we only talked about wrestling for like maybe the last 10 minutes.
Right? I know. I noticed that about the whole episode. I was like, not much wrestling talk.
And that was another thing too. It was like, we kind of were working people. It was like everybody's sitting there like, oh, they're gonna talk about wrestling, and of course, me being on there, it's like, oh, he's gonna talk shit about somebody, and then no, unfortunately, like Tony Deppen didn't come up, and we didn't.
Oh my
Uh,
lord. Well, I can tell some things don't change.
yeah, man, that whole bit is still hilarious to me. So I'm still convinced that one of these days, somehow, some way, he's gonna end up listening to that,
He is.
and then I'm gonna run into him at a show somewhere, and he's gonna be like, "Fuck you say about me on the internet."
And no offense, but he probably will kill you.
I don't think so. He kind of looks like a waiter. It'll be okay.
Uh,
It'll be all right. So, man, what have you been up to in these months since we have been here? I think the last episode we did was about Forbidden Door, which is kind of like the low point of pro wrestling to me over the last a couple of years.
well, I mean that's interesting that you say that because I saw your I saw or I saw I heard the Rough Cut episode, which I guess was kind of the relaunch of an Evolve review or whatnot. I don't know if that's exactly what you're calling it, but I heard the Rough Cut episode, and you were talking about this, and we used to have this nickname for me, right? I was the man who consumes more wrestling content than anyone.
Yep, we
And
actually brought that up on the Tim Blackman episode. He started talking about WCW 2000, and I said we're gonna have to get Stovall on here if you want to talk about that.
I have not finished that episode because I've had a lot going on, but so I need to hear that whole episode again. But yeah, like I don't know. I heard you talk about that, and that used to be my nickname and everything. Well, I used to take pride in that, and I don't know. I guess life happens, and I don't know if interests weigh or whatnot, but it's been an interesting time in my life. Let's put it that way. Wrestling has not really been a focus of mine, and it's mostly because, and it's interesting that you said this, because actually, kind of when I watched Forbidden Door, I was kind of like, man, I really don't like modern wrestling right now. Like, I just don't like anything about it. I don't like MLW. I don't really like a lot of AEW. I like some things. I had a good time when I saw them live, but even then I had some criticisms about it. But that's one of the things that's always bothered me about a lot of podcasts, wrestling podcasts and stuff like that, is there's a lot of negativity about wrestling. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, do we like wrestling or do we hate wrestling? Like, it gets confusing at times. And I don't like watching something and, trying to figure out, is what I'm watching good? Like, is it just good to me? Do I not know anything anymore? Like, I don't know. And there was just all this negativity surrounding everything, and just people were just being so negative about stuff. And I just kind of like tuned it off for a little bit. I still listen to wrestling podcasts such as My World. That's obviously my favorite podcast right now. I listen to all the Conrad Thompson ones pretty much. And I watch old wrestling as well at times, but I'm not that big a fan right now of the modern product. And I think there was an AEW pay-per-view that we were going to cover, but we never did. And I was kind of glad that we didn't, because I was going to be like, dude, you might have to do this episode solo because I didn't watch it.
I think it was Forbidden Door, wasn't it? Because we did the preview episode, but then we never actually reviewed the event.
That's right.
And if we had, I would have had almost nothing good to say about it. So,
well, that's funny then, because I was going to like message you and say like, dude, you're going to be doing this one alone, because I didn't watch it. I had no interest in I had no interest in watching it. I had no interest in spending $54 to watch it. And I had no interest in watching it for free in some way. Like, I did not care.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I wanted to leave it at, was just like, look, I don't want to even explain why I don't care. I just don't care. Like,
yep.
I just didn't want to do anything. So, it was interesting. Like, I haven't really thought about modern wrestling. There's some things I like. I did kind of enjoy SummerSlam, watching that and everything like that. Maybe it was because I got to watch it live and everything like that. And I also got put on a different shift at work at my shoot job or whatnot. So I may be talking in circles around here, but that's just basically what happened with me. I haven't been following wrestling that much. I will go back and watch old wrestling. Like, they're starting to put up more WCW Saturday nights. And I got to say this, dude, they have one of the WCW episodes they put up like 6 new 1994 Saturday nights. That was when the start of, you know, the iconic Saturday night intro, right? From TBS back in the day.
Yeah.
You know that intro?
Yeah.
I saw it and like, dude, I almost wanted to cry. I was like, oh my God, there it is. That's the intro. I've been waiting so long for it. Like, I saw it and I was just like, oh my God, like, I'm a kid again. I'm a freaking kid again. Now, those are still episodes that I don't really remember of Saturday night. It doesn't have the iconic, you know, sliding doors yet. It doesn't have that awesome intro and that just the way of that show look. It doesn't have that yet, but it's coming soon. And when that happens, it's like, oh my God, like I'm a kid again, basically. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, like I just said, I haven't been following much modern wrestling, man.
Yeah, I mean, and that's me too. I will. I did catch the Flair roast, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Um, I unfortunately watched the Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view. The only thing I really want to say about that, and then we'll get into our main event for this evening, is the actual match, other than Rick, was fantastic. Like, you could tell that Jarrett, Andrade, Lethal all understood, like, Rick's limitations, and they knew they were going to all have to go 150%. And they did. They had an incredible match around him. You know, and not to disparage Rick, he's 72. So the thing is, he never should have been in there. But you know, that's neither here nor there. I hope he really hangs it up now because people were really worried about his health. But if you didn't see the roast from that weekend, it is definitely worth watching. It was absolutely hilarious.
Question did you see any of the show itself?
The actual StarCast event, yes.
Was the rest of it good? Because I haven't seen it yet.
So
there was a couple of matches on there that I saw that were booked that I was like, oh, I really do want to see that. Like, I thought I saw the American Wolves were on there.
They were. Here was the problem, though. You had this, so they were doing this under the, you know, the tagline of Jim Crockett Promotions, right? So they had the old school Jim Crockett look, and then they had, other than the main event and Rock and Roll Express, everything was like indie-rific. It was like an ROH show. And I mean, Jonathan Gresham actually was on there. And so the whole thing was just really odd. Because the crowd, you could tell, was there for like the old school feel and the old school wrestling. So, you know, you had like the American Wolves come out and to almost nothing, and then Rock and Roll Express comes out and the roof comes off the place. It was just a weird booking for an old school wrestling card.
Did the Wolves fight the Rock and Roll Express?
No, it was let me look at the card real quick because it was, I can't remember. Let's see.
Like, I saw some photos of the event, but what was interesting about that is from all of that, I think Conrad and Jeff Jarrett are now going to like launch their own thing.
That's what it looked like, and of course, Jarrett's gone from WWE now.
Yes, and I'll be honest, dude. I mean, I kind of will support something that Conrad and Jeff Jarrett do because I believe that they would know what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Conrad, you know, might not have, you know, really done a booking of a wrestling event that much, but he's been talking to just some of the most brilliant minds in the business. So,
yeah. I mean, I'm definitely interested to see what they come up with. My issue would be like, where is the, like, where's the niche for it, right? Like, what is it? Where does it fit in? what does it do that TNA is not doing, that AEW is not doing, that WWE is not doing? And I think really honestly with Triple H at the helm of WWE, I really think we're going to see a lot of just kind of changes. I think he's going to try to cover all the bases. So I think he's definitely of the mindset that he wants, um, he wants to see like the casuals do one, enjoying one thing. He wants to see, the kind of hardcore fan base enjoying another thing. And maybe it's just going to be the TV product will contain kind of something for everybody,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Like I've always said that about Triple H. I'm like, man, when he takes over WWE or whatever, like to me, he's the best candidate because he looks at it he can see it from all standpoints now. He can
Right.
see it business wise. He can see it, from the outside world, but he also sees it from the most important part, which is the boys' side, the boys and girls, the wrestlers. Like he knows what it's like to be a talent, and he knows now how to run it from a business standpoint. So I'm like, when you have that combination, that to me is like a deadly combination. It's like you can't stop that,
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it falls, and what they end up doing with it. But by all means, Jarrett's a smart man. If the money's not there, he's not going to do it. Um,
Oh yeah.
by the way, that tag match was, and I can't believe I forgot this. It was the Machine Guns versus the Wolves.
Oh my God. Now I definitely want to watch it just to see
Yeah,
that.
it was a good match. It's just the crowd didn't care about it. It was just so odd because the other tag match was Rock and Roll Express, and they were up against Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson representing the Four Horsemen, and that was a great match, and the crowd was really into it. But yeah, I mean, like another match on the card was like Killer Cross versus Davey Boy Smith, and it was like the crowd wasn't hugely into that. It just wasn't. It wasn't. It was an odd thing, but I mean, they popped huge for Rick. Um, they had Rick come out, and Conrad has the original gold belt in his collection, so he had the robe on, and he opens the robe, and he's got the big gold belt on, and it was a nice little nostalgia thing. But the only part of it I could say I really really enjoyed was the roast, because the comedians that they hired for the roast were amazing, and the people from the actual wrestling industry were pretty awful. Um, a lot of them had no idea what a roast is. Like Bubba Ray doesn't know, or Bully Ray has no idea what a roast is. Um, a lot of them got really butthurt over some stuff that got said, and I'm like, then you shouldn't have come to a roast.
I know that's what it's all about, is like roasting you. Like,
Yeah,
but it's like a comedian's graduation.
yeah.
You
There
know?
were some excellent lines from there. Uh, it was very good. But there was
Well,
also there were some people that they were so horrible that it was funny.
well, I got to ask you this. Then, aside from the roast and the event, because I will say this: this was what I thought was one of the best parts about this Ric Flair's last match thing, was the build up to this. Like, I mean, they actually kind of blurred the lines. I listened to one of the episodes on My World, and Jarrett went straight up heel, like on the podcast. Like
I,
he cut one of those like TNA Jarrett promos where he was saying that this guy was good, but that he's I'm better, kind of thing and whatnot. Like I was like, holy shit, like this is good stuff. Like
yeah, I mean, it was kind of. I listened to that episode too, and I really think they did a lot with it, not having anything to work with, not having a television program to build this with. But
yeah.
on that same note, I did not like how they opened the podcast with like the promo video playing for like 20 minutes. Like I fast forwarded through all of that because I number one I had already seen it, and number two nobody wants to listen to a backstage segment that they can't see.
Oh yeah.
I get that they're mostly doing it for the people on like ad free shows. That's their main customers. But I'm like, I'm not paying for that shit.
Yeah.
If there was a way for me to pay money and get the episodes in my podcast app without the commercials, I would do it.
Well, you can also watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, but I mean, I listen to podcasts in the car. I don't ever, me personally, I never, well, I won't say never, but it's super rare for me to just go on YouTube and sit down and watch something. Like, I'm just too busy for that usually. Typically, I listen to podcasts in the car or while I'm working. If I'm going to sit down and if I have like the time to sit down and actually pay full attention to something and watch it, then I'm usually going to be catching up on like one of the 12 TV shows that I'm trying to watch. Shameless plug. I am going to have Superhero Homie Q, also known as the Ace of Professional Wrestling. He's going to come on later this week, and we are going to review House of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones universe show.
Oh boy.
So that is a thing. Speaking of television.
Well, then, spoiler alert for everyone listening to this. Spoiler alert. It's either going to be really, really good or really, really bad.
I won't give it away yet. And it may be both because he hasn't seen it yet, so I don't know what his thoughts are on the episode.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I just meant from your standpoint. I just know you.
So I actually, I will say briefly that I did actually really enjoy it. So,
oh, okay, good. Well, apparently so did a lot of people. Like I said, I do Master Control, and that's been one of the talks of the town on all the entertainment shows was that show. So apparently it crashed HBO's server.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 10 million people.
So, I mean, say what you want to about it, but that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree. It is what it is. You had mentioned something earlier, and I wanted to clarify this before we move on. So the where we're reviewing things like this episode, those are still going to be under the Evolved Review banner. So if we're reviewing something, but if it's just like an interview with someone or something like that, then it's just going to be under Entertainment Evolved. So they're all going to still be in the same place. They're all still going to be, if you listen to this, all the episodes that we do are all going to be in whatever podcast app, right? You're not going to have to go somewhere else to get it. But it's just going to be labeled, that way. So that's going to be the only difference.
Okay.
So, after that intro, we are known for our long cold opens. Here we are. So what we're covering today, so we decided to kind of segment these out because I don't think each one of these deserves really its own whole episode. I know they're 2 hours long, but I think a lot of these, like, we know a lot of this stuff. But the other thing being, we divided them up into like a part 1, 2, and 3. So today we're doing part 1 because I think there's going to be 9 episodes this season. So today we're going to do part 1, and part 1 is The Undertaker, Goldberg, and the Bella Twins.
Yes.
And then, so when we come back to do part 2, let me see here which ones are in that one. So I know the Kurt Angle is in that one, Lex Luger is in that one, and the DX episode is in that one. I've only seen up to Kurt Angle so far. So I'll have to prioritize watching those other 2. But then the last episode is going to be a banger because that one's going to be Edge, Rey Mysterio, and then the last episode this season is about WrestleMania.
Really? WrestleMania has a Legends?
Yeah. So I guess it's going to be about like the history of WrestleMania.
I can't wait for that.
I know that last episode, like I'm so excited to record it now.
I look, here's the thing. I'll say that like that's one of the only events in modern wrestling that I will never miss.
Right,
Is
because
WrestleMania.
it's so prolific, you know.
It really is, but it's not just the event itself; it's everything that happens that weekend. It's just it's 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 what a wrestling convention is supposed to be, basically.
Yeah, I mean, WrestleMania and WrestleCade are to me the two biggest events in wrestling, and people can argue that, but the people that argue that have never been to WrestleCade
This is true.
because WrestleCade is huge. I mean, it's not as big as WrestleMania, obviously, but I think it's bigger than anything. Like, it may not have the attendance of like an All Out, but as far as like the how big the show is and how it feels, I mean, it's just there's nothing like it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And WrestleMania is obviously the same exact way. So that'll be so. I'll say like I'm not following thing like I can't watch Monday Night Raw every single Monday night. I'm not sitting in front of the television for 3 hours like that watching it.
right,
But I will watch even if it's a 7 hour WrestleMania. You still watch it.
and it will be every year until Triple H changes that. But I
Yeah.
like the 2 night Mania. The 2 night WrestleMania feels a hell of a lot better than the 8 hour WrestleMania.
I agree completely. I was against it at first, but then I kind of liked it because it gives you 2 nights of something to do, kind of thing. Like
Exactly.
it's just it's a cool feeling. I like it. I think it's supposed to be that basically.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, man. So I kind of, from a ratings perspective, I disagreed with them choosing Undertaker to be episode 1. And we talked about this off mic a little bit. And it's that episode, like, to come back with a bang with something that people really want to see. Speaking of, they should do a DDP episode. But
I knew you were going to say that, and I thought the same exact thing.
but it's like with Undertaker at this point in time, he's fresh off of a Hall of Fame induction.
Yep.
So right around the Hall of Fame, we heard everything in the world about Undertaker. We had the Last Ride documentary,
Which was great, by the way.
fantastic. We covered every single part of it right here on this show, and I would definitely invite you to go back and listen to those. And so there was a few tidbits here that they didn't, quite get into Last Ride, or that they didn't quite talk about. But I feel like a lot of this was ground that we had already tread on.
Mm-hmm. That was exactly the way that I felt too watching this. Like even the opening, I was like, okay, so here we go. We're going to focus a lot on the Hall of Fame. And then I saw the opening. I was just like, I already know all this stuff.
Right.
Like you're not telling me anything different. Like they kind of went into the joke of being Eggman and everything like that. But even still, like I was just like, I'll say this. There was more of a story behind the WCW run and his independent runs, or I should say.
Yeah, we all knew about the Buzz Sawyer stuff that had been tread over. We all knew about kind of how he came into WWE or WWF at the time. But yeah, the stuff with Dan Spivey and the skyscrapers and Teddy Long, it was so cool to see like the young Teddy Long.
Yes.
I was really shocked that they didn't get him for this. And that kind of goes back to I think the same issue we had with season 1 is it's like there's a lot of people they should be getting for these interviews that they're not. And then and then they just have these random, wrestling writer columnist people that don't have any actual insight.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just people trying to get their name out there or something like that. But
yeah. I mean, you and I both have more experience in the wrestling business than some of the people that they let come on for these.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm just like, what is happening here?
Well,
so I did like that, that sort of deal though about him, how he, met Percy Pringle early on before he was ever even doing the whole Paul Bearer gimmick and all that, and then the trip to South Africa. I don't think I had heard about that, so that was that was a cool, kind of thing that they put in there.
Yeah, I don't remember that story as well. So that was a nice little inside edition. But yeah, that was really cool to see. Also, old Percy Pringle, promos as well. Because he would do the typical manager laugh back in the day. He's like Percy Pringle.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. And then, have you seen, by the way, maybe we need to cover this. I don't know, but because we didn't do it during the Undertaker, the long 5-parter, but there was one on Paul Bearer that was done. And I watched that one, and his story is so interesting because he's talking about, as a kid, he was interested in putting on funerals for people.
Right.
And I'm sitting there just like, if this doesn't sound like a Tim Burton goth movie, I don't know what does. Like, I was just like, this is so interesting. And then he was a professional wrestling fan as well. He would go to the wrestling fans when he was studying for mortuary and stuff like that. I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, so he was a fan of wrestling, and he gets into the business. And of course, Vince asked him, well, what else do you got besides you're a wrestling manager? Well, I've been studying to be a mortician. Boom.
Right.
That is all he had to do was that. I was like, that's the greatest pitch to any promoter if you ever say that to anyone. It's just like, yeah, I'm a wrestling fan and I'm doing wrestling manager. Okay, what else you got? Well, I'm a mortician. Nah, stop right there. Come on. just you're hired.
So, a thing that a lot of people don't know, there's actually a tremendous amount of money in that.
Oh, there is. I
But
mean,
but it also costs a lot to do it,
yeah.
like to get licensed for it and everything. So,
I just couldn't fathom being surrounded by
all the time.
all the time. Like, it's like I get uncomfortable when I have to talk about it for a few hours or even a few minutes, like then being talked about all the time. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, that was what he was into. So I encourage you, check that out, man. If you haven't seen it, it's on the WWE Network or Peacock, whatever the hell. Find it. It's the Paul Bearer story or something like that. But it's really interesting, and it talks about their relationship and stuff like that. So just a little side note.
He's always been an incredible figure to
Yes.
me. Glenn Jacobs joins the show here, has nothing of interest to say, sort of like his personal life. So moving on.
I knew
see.
it when I saw him too. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna hear about this.
Yeah. So anyway, they talk about the Hell in a Cell match, and while I could hear about the Hell in a Cell match for the rest of my life, it was nothing new because I mean they've both told the story 100 times.
I was about to say, I've literally heard Bruce Pritchard talk about it. I've heard Undertaker talk about it. I've heard Mick Foley talk about it. We know what happened. Mick Foley went too far. The match is one of the greatest of all time, but should it have been stopped? Should blah, 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 all this other stuff. But I will say that I like the fact that they focused on the rivalry a little bit more.
Yeah, agreed on that. Because usually most people just cover kind of the brutality of the match.
Well, they covered the brutality of that match, but here's the thing. A lot of people forget this. They had some really great matches overall. Not just the Hell in a Cell match, obviously, which will be forever everyone's top, 5 match of all time or something like that. But they also had some great matches that should have been terrible, like the Buried Alive match. To me,
Right.
the only reason that they were able to do 7 more after that was because that match was so good. Like, the matchup, it's like, I don't know. You can say what you want to about the ending and everything like that, but the match itself was great. And then they had like a world title matchup that was amazing. I mean, the boiler room brawl. Even it's it's a gimmick idea, but it worked for the both of them at the time.
Agreed.
So I mean, that's some good stuff.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that whole feud was really good, and a lot of those matches that they were tasked with, it's like, okay, you've got an Undertaker and a guy who looks like he escaped from the asylum,
Uh-huh.
and they're going to have all these gimmick matches, and almost all of them are going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
So,
Because I mean, again, you look at it, I look at it and I go, a buried alive match is actually a terrible idea. But they were able to make it work because of the participants involved.
The one thing Bruce Pritchard really adds to this is when he talks about. No. This wasn't Pritchard, actually. So, yeah, Bruce Pritchard added nothing to this. It was Heyman. It was Heyman, actually, that said this. He talked about how long was Austin on top, and how long was The Rock on top, and how long was Cena on top. But Taker was a main event guy for 30 years.
He was.
And that's just to remain an attraction for that long. Because I was tired of John Cena within a year.
Yeah.
It's like you either have to do what Austin did, whereas you leave when you're at your absolute peak and people are still dying to see you, and then they're always clamoring for you to come back. Or you spend too long there and you get burnt out like Rick, and it's just like, here we are 10 years after he should have retired, and he keeps coming back, and we want him to stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it might work for, whoever, but Taker, man, I don't know. There's just something about him. There's something about his presence. It's all right. So I've come to understand what charisma really is. I didn't get it at first. Obviously, being a fan of the wrestling business, I get that. But I'm going to give an example that has nothing to do with wrestling. That is a perfect example of charisma. Isn't that a surprise, right? But here's the example. There's a guy in a band called Lorna Shore, and his name is Will Ramos. He is one of the biggest deathcore vocalists in the world, right? Probably the biggest right now. And he went viral because of that song "To the Hellfire." We actually reviewed it on this show. That was a fun little episode. But he's so big right now, and people are wondering, why is everyone talking about him over all of the other deathcore vocalists? And I said, well, here's why. He has the charisma that you can't explain it. You don't know why, but it's like you put him in front of the camera and you're just gravitating.
Right. Agreed.
Not stop staring, and I don't know why, but I want to see more of whatever this person is going to do. And that's just called natural charisma. And that's what Will Ramos has, which is why he's one of the best in his field. And to be honest, that's why Taker was on top for so long. It's just, it doesn't, and that's why Stone Cold got as big as he did, and The Rock. It just, you put these guys in front of the camera, and people are just, they're like, I cannot look away.
Right. I mean, it's like, that's why The Rock and Stone Cold and Cena have all found such incredible success outside of WWE, is because it didn't matter what they were going to be doing. People wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And people can get mad at this all day, but Jake Paul is the same concept.
No, I agree. I really did not get that until I saw him at SummerSlam, and I was like, wow. Like,
best match on the card.
It was.
Easily.
I was so shocked.
It's twofold, right, with him. Before we go off on a damn tangent, but with him, he looks like he is in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And he works really, really hard.
Yeah.
And that is to me the number one thing that's missing from wrestling at all levels, indie, national companies, whatever, is that everybody now, they look like they are performing.
I agree. I agree 100%. That is why I don't like modern wrestling right now as well. I think that, the guys focus too much on spots. They focus too much on trying to get these moves in and stuff like that. And it's just like, no, give me the character, give me a story, give me something to follow. And Taker is one of the ones that has he naturally got that from the time he stepped into the business. You could tell that. He's like, I get what this is.
Right, and they're not going to do a 2 hour documentary about anybody because they could do a 450.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people have been able to do a 450, and they're not in the Hall of Fame and don't have a documentary.
Exactly. I mean, Taker got it from day one. I will say this, there was a little bit more emphasis on this than there was in the Last Ride documentary, which was the fact that he made it known pretty much that he didn't want, or he did not think that Mark Calloway could exist. He became he was the Undertaker. He's like, no, like I'm protect. That's why, people can say that, all of these gimmicks that the Undertaker had and all of this story and everything, people somewhat believed in the Undertaker because you heard Stone Cold talk about it, that like he had all this stuff that they were going to do in the match, and then the music hits and he's standing out in the ring and he was not in the dressing room with them, 5 minutes before this, and then the music hits and he's like, whoa, like I actually feel like I am in the presence of a phenom, and that he just has that.
It doesn't come through on television. Like the entrance on TV is very impressive all the time, but the first time I was ever actually in a venue, and we talk about this in wrestling all the time, is the ultimate thing you can do at a wrestling show is make a moment for people.
Yep.
And I will never forget the moment that I was in the building for an Undertaker entrance for the first time. It is surreal. It is something else.
It entirely is. I saw it in Augusta, actually. I've seen it twice. Once I saw him with the American Badass thing, and then I saw him in Old School Taker. And so I was like, both times it's just like, wow, this dude just commands the floor.
So very interestingly, so I've seen it twice as well. One of them was at WrestleMania at 27.
Oh yeah, I did that one as well for me.
Right, you were there for that one, and the other one, I was at a Raw draft, one of the drafts that they did, and this is when they were doing Superstars, right?
Yeah.
And so they had a taping for Superstars right before the Raw episode, and completely unannounced, out of nowhere, Matt Hardy comes out to the ring, and then the fucking lights go out, and the Undertaker's music hits, and the pop is enormous because this was in one of his breaks where like he had wrestled at WrestleMania and then had not been on TV at all.
Yeah.
And he just shows up on fucking Superstars of all things at a fucking taping and just comes out there and demolishes Matt Hardy. They were probably trying to get him back into ring shape.
Probably.
But no one knew about it, so the roof just blew off the place. Everybody was like, he's not really here. That's not happening. That's not going to happen. But sure enough, he walked out and everybody lost their damn mind.
That's amazing. So then there's 3 times I've actually seen The Undertaker. Once in Augusta, twice in Augusta, and then once at WrestleMania. I keep forgetting that WrestleMania entrance because I just remember the match itself. Because I'll say that, say what everyone wants to about WrestleMania 27, but it has the greatest live match I've ever watched in my life. I'm talking that I've actually sat in the arena and watched the match itself unfold. I saw that at WrestleMania. That match is still to me one of my top favorite matches of all time.
The first Triple H match?
Yes.
And the thing about that is that match is not looked at as this incredible match because it didn't translate on television as well. But live in the arena, it felt like nothing else that happened that entire time.
Yep, I agree completely. When he picked him, like when Triple H looked at him and did the Undertaker slash sign and then picked him up in the tombstone, I, along with everyone in the Georgia Dome, we all stood up and were like, oh, like it was incredible. I was like, these two know how to put on a wrestling match. These are two veterans where I guarantee you that was one time the writers did not tell them what to do. They were just like, yeah, you two go out there and just do your thing.
Well, they knew they weren't going to top what he had done with Shawn. So they
Right.
just amped up the brutality immensely, and they just beat the bejesus out of each other. So,
Hey, I
yeah,
loved it.
it was great. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was a smart call.
It was,
You know.
it was great. I loved it.
Well, speaking of amazing things that have happened in the Georgia Dome, I know we both want to talk about this for a minute. So,
Yes.
in the interest of time, let's talk about this damn Bill Goldberg episode, man.
Yes, and before we even talk about it, man, I'll tell you this. You hyped up this for me. Like
Oh yeah,
I thought this one's gonna be so. Like, even he's not gonna be interested in this one. No one is. And then you were like, dude, we gotta cover the gold. Like, that was actually the first episode that you were like, no, we need to cover this one for
yes.
sure. And so I was like, okay, well, now I have to watch this. And I watched it and I thought, this was tremendous. Like, this was one I watched and I'm like, I actually, this one is as good as the Booker T episode, in my
It
opinion.
right, and that was like one of the best episodes, and yeah,
Yes.
this one was right up there with it for me.
Yes, it was really, really good. I was very surprised. It showed a whole different side to Goldberg.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing: WWE has used him so poorly for the last few years
Yeah.
because it's just like they have these dates on the contract. Whenever they need to go back to the well, they just have Goldberg come in and make a tough promo and then put over whoever's the champion at the time, and then he leaves. And you know the moment the music hits that that's what's going to happen, so you're not interested.
Yeah.
Um, if anything, if I have any critique of this episode, it's that I would have wanted them to talk a little bit more about him coming back and beating Brock for the belt because that was explosive and no one saw that coming.
I agree with that one. I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more. But what I really loved, like, I loved seeing more of the WCW story that had not really been tapped into, and his love for football. Which, by the way, as we all know, Mr. Kitchens, I am a football fan.
I know.
I am a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
I know.
Okay. I would like to point out, and if there's any critique that I can give of this that I can actually confirm, was I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, we have all this footage of Bill Goldberg in a Georgia Bulldogs uniform. At around when was the dates for those? Wasn't that around 92, 91?
Yeah, it had to have been somewhere in there because he debuted in WCW '97. So
Yeah, so it had to have been, and he was in the NFL for like a few years, you saw. So it had to have been around that time. Okay, there was only one commentator for the Georgia Bulldogs at that time. His name was Larry Munson. Why did I not hear a Larry Munson call on this goddamn program?
well, it's very weird about that because in the first season, while Jim Ross was doing AEW stuff and was on Dark Side of the Ring, they muted a lot of Jim Ross commentary in the clips that they showed.
I
Whereas
did.
they did not do that this season that I know of. They've been including JR in there.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, they included him in this episode, and they included him in Taker and several others. Which, I
Yeah,
mean,
Last season, though, they cut him out of a bunch of it,
Yeah.
which is just some petty Vince McMahon bullshit, you know.
Oh yeah, it is. But you're not going to do a documentary with some of these guys and not have JR speak on their career. He's so instrumental in a lot of them. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, but like I said, that was one thing I noticed was I was like, why am I not hearing Larry Munson in these calls? Like, are you kidding me? That's a we have Georgia Bulldogs footage, but we don't have Larry Munson saying Goldberg sacked somebody. I guarantee you there was a call out there or something, but whatever. That was just a little minor thing I had to throw in there, but that was interesting seeing his, football journey and how, as you notice, and it's been confirmed, he was not a wrestling fan.
Right.
He did not follow pro wrestling.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was evident too, in a lot of things that he was doing, and it was very clear. The thing about the documentary and the interviews with Bill is that he doesn't shy away from the fact that he was inexperienced and didn't know what he was doing back then.
Yeah.
But he also was booked that way. So a lot of that was on management. It wasn't, he's going out there trying to hurt people or anything. It was, honestly, he really was trying his best, but, he was not at a level yet to, I think, be competing where he was at, and he was kind of thrust into that position.
No, but again, with Undertaker and Stone Cold and The Rock at the time, you put him in front of the camera, man, and the audience couldn't look away.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you saw, look at all of the Tonight Show appearances and all of the outside appearances he was doing for WCW at the time. I remember one of my fondest memories of being a wrestling fan as a child was in Augusta, Georgia, right? This had to have been, it had to have been either a month or just a couple of weeks after he won the world title from Hogan. He did an appearance at the Augusta Civic Center, but this was not a WCW event. They were not in town. He just came for this, I don't know if it was an auction event or what it was, but it was like some kind of event that they were having at the Civic Center, and they needed, I guess, an attraction. So they had Goldberg on Saturday, and then this is the Monday Night War thing. They had Goldberg on Saturday, and then the very next night on Sunday, they had Sable for WWE. And right. This was both at the Augusta Civic Center, but this wasn't a wrestling event. This had nothing to do with wrestling.
Right.
Well, it sold out because of the appearance from Goldberg. I did not go to the Sable one, but I went to the Goldberg one. And I mean, dude, I'm telling you, when he walked out just for the autograph signing, it was like they hit the music and we were at Nitro. The place went nuts. And it was so cool. We waited in line. It was a long time, but I got to meet him. I got to shake his hand. I mean, man, people can say what they want to about Goldberg, but I mean, he was one of the biggest stars in the world at one point.
Agreed.
And here's the thing too. This is something that I've noticed, and Jim Cornette has said this, the problem with AEW in ways is they have a bunch of guys who are wrestling fans. That kind of is sometimes the problem. But if you notice,
we say this a lot. All the marks are in the business, man.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Back when Goldberg came in, people act like that was like he's a new thing. Like, oh, he didn't like the wrestling business. So, why would he get in and stuff like that? Sting, Lex Luger, Kurt Angle, and a couple of others were not marks for the business. They didn't watch pro wrestling. But when they got in the business, for whatever reason, they understood it better than half of the guys that were actually wrestling fans. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and that is part of the problem. It's like, we didn't talk about this, but it's, it's Jonathan Gresham reportedly telling Tony Khan that he was in the top 50 for the PWI 500. Like,
like
you know
that
what I
means
mean?
the damn thing.
It's a worked list. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I've talked about this a few times. It's like a lot of the people being worked in the business these days are the actual workers. The fans know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very upsetting.
But here's the thing, Goldberg not being a fan, yes, obviously in ways that hurt him, but in ways it helped him because he was able to be real. He was able to actually be something. And that was the thing. Like, the intensity that you saw, I mean, we'll get into it more, obviously, but just as a, real quick thing, like, that wasn't fake. That was real. That's why people got behind him. And people can say what they want to about his wrestling, abilities or whatnot. And here's the thing. I had this conversation with someone about this at work, right? Someone who's also a wrestling fan. And they were talking about this. We were talking about this particular episode. And he said, man, if you look at that crowd, right? He said, I don't care what you've seen in today's world or whatnot, but you look at that crowd when he won, they went absolutely nuts. I mean, that was a reaction I did not even see when Daniel Bryan won the world title.
Right. Joe Brown was there.
Really?
Yeah, he was there. And he talks about it all the time. Just how, just mind blowing and like just memorable that moment was.
It was. And that's why when people, sit here and talk about today's wrestling, and I'm going, man, there's like, I remember that night vividly when he won. My dad did trivia at the King George, right, in Augusta. And Nitro was on at the time. Obviously, Nitro had gone to 3 hours at that point, and I didn't realize that as a kid. But we got done with the event, and Charlie Blackwell, his friend who was there playing trivia that night, he looked at us and he just goes, "Oh my goodness, it's time for Goldberg." And we were like, okay, well, we got to get home. So me and Dad got home, and we got home. I swear to you, I still to this day do not know how this was done, but we got home in time before the match even started. We got home right as Goldberg was making his entrance to the ring. We put it on, and we were watching the matchup. I'm sitting there just like, this ain't going to happen. Goldberg's not about, is he really about to win? This can't happen. He picks Hogan up in the jackhammer, and I, like people in the Georgia Dome, my dad even was like, he goes, yay, like this. And we were just, dude, that is when I was a pro wrestling fan. That is when I really liked wrestling, because at that moment, there was nobody on the internet. There weren't a bunch of YouTube vids the next day going, well, these were the ups and downs of Nitro last night, or these were the ups and downs. This was done wrong. No, nobody gave a shit. He won the belt, and everyone lost their minds.
Yeah,
it was like my favorite team won the national championship. Which, by the way, go Dogs.
I knew that was going to come up.
Hey, man, you know what? That was a moment I'll never forget.
Right. I'm not a football person, but I know a lot of them, and I know for people who were fans, I know how I felt when the Braves won the series. So
yeah,
it, and that has happened, I think, since it happened for UGA, right? So I don't know when the last time.
Same year, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a good year for Georgia sports fans for sure.
Oh, it was. And I don't know, like, dude, that was that was what it felt like when Goldberg won the world title. So people can say, well, should he have been at that level? Should he have been pushed to that level? Maybe, maybe not. The thing is, though, is how can you pass up that crowd reaction?
No, I mean from a business standpoint, it was absolutely the thing to do. One of the things that they touched on in the documentary that I thought was interesting
Mm-hmm.
was that they talked about like his Jewish heritage and everything, and I was very glad to see that they touched on that.
Yeah.
The thing about it for me is I don't feel like they ever addressed it when he was with either company, with either WCW or WWE. I feel like if he was a new wrestler coming in now, they would be talking about it all the time, right?
Right.
Because I guess that's just kind of the nature of things now. Like back then, you didn't bring that kind of like personal side of you into the gimmick. Um, but I did think it was weird that they had a little focus on it in the documentary, and I thought it was cool. But you never really heard anything about his like Jewish heritage when he was actually, in his prime, either the first run in WCW or when he came back and was in WWE.
Well, I think he even said it when they mentioned it, like it's not something he likes to talk about.
Right. And that makes sense.
And
Um,
if Goldberg says he doesn't want to talk about something, I'm just going to go, yep, all right.
well, and that's fine, but he also says in the documentary that he thought he was like a hero for like Jewish kids, and that's why he didn't want to change his name. So I'm
True.
like, you can't really have it both ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
You either are or you aren't. Um, but yeah, I really like this. And the other thing that they focused on a lot that I didn't see coming was them going into the whole Bret Hart thing as heavily as they did.
That was something I was very interested in when I saw that they were talking about it and the way that they talked about it. You finally got to hear it from both sides because I think everyone's only heard it from Bret Hart's standpoint. And I'm not gonna lie, dude. Like, even seeing this reaction, dude, I get Bret being pissed about it. I really, really do. And it's hard for me to say. I don't want to say negative about it, but it's like Bret, man. Like, at some point, can you forgive him or whatnot? I don't know. Like, I have mixed feelings about it, kind of thing. Because here's the thing, he makes it seem like Goldberg was trying to hurt him, and I don't believe that Goldberg was trying to hurt him. I think that he was inexperienced and didn't really fully know what to do, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that it's very obvious that Goldberg is remorseful
Yeah.
about this. And I can understand him coming out after this and saying that he's done apologizing to Bret Hart for the last 20 years. Like, it happened. It was terrible. It took Bret Hart away from us. He probably had several years left where he could have performed at a very high level.
Maybe. Yeah.
Um, you know, the way he was being used in WCW, and this doesn't come into this, was pretty bad. Um, so it's like
Well, we
I
already know that he was being used terrible, and I mean, they've covered that so many times.
yeah, and I'm not trying to say like, oh well, he wouldn't have, even if he hadn't have got kicked in the head, his career still would have gone to shit because he was in WCW. I mean, that's just the facts, right? And it doesn't excuse anything Bill Goldberg did. But
No.
on that same note, I think that it is fine for Bret Hart to be upset about this forever because it is going to affect him for the rest of his life. But it's also fine for Goldberg to move on because there's nothing he can do about it at this point.
Well, no, because it happened and there's nothing you can do to change it. So it's, hey, man, I'm very, very sorry. Hey, man, I'm very, very sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. All right. You know
For
what?
20 years. Yeah.
and then it's like, all right, man, well, I can't get you to forgive me, so I've got to move on, and I get it. I see it from both standpoint, man. I I don't know. Like I said, I'm torn between it, but yeah. I don't know. By this point, though, everything about WCW sucked. Everything.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the late, I mean, those later years, man, it was
Here's
bad.
here's the thing too that I'm glad that they didn't really focus on this. I mean, we mentioned it obviously, but you know, they talk about the streak, right? And people are like, all right, well, where do you go from there? Okay, so there's always this what ifs. I've always said this, and I think you're in agreement with me. In fact, I think we both have the same idea when it comes to this. But I always thought that the guy who should have ended Goldberg's streak should have been Diamond Dallas Page.
Yes.
Because it would have given the crowd a good baby face while not being an unstoppable baby face. Because that was the problem with Goldberg, was he was too unstoppable. And Bischoff made the point. He's like, you got to put the hero in jeopardy. The hero had, the audience has to believe that at some point the hero's going to lose for them to get behind the hero. They have to know that the villain is going to take away their joy only for the hero to come back and bring that joy back,
Right.
And you couldn't do that with Goldberg if he's just mauling people. But
right.
I thought that the guy that could have done it should have been Diamond Dallas Page. And then from there, they could have done this stuff with the NWO or anything at the time, but obviously that's not what they went with. They went with Kevin Nash. They went with, the finger poke of doom after that. And, it was not good on all fronts. But that to me is the way that it should have done. But there's going to be people who are going to debate how they should have done it for years. At this point, it's really a dead argument. I mean, it is. But hey, that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that all in all, they did a great job with this documentary of kind of covering, like, we saw different versions of Bill, over the years. Like we saw the WCW one that we talked about, and as you just said, they botched that at the end because they didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to see him lose the belt the way he lost it. A lot of people enjoyed the DDP heel run they eventually gave him with the title, but he was the babyface for most of his career there. People wanted to see him get that moment,
Yeah, that, and to me, they missed an opportunity to, have an original WCW face, because people talk about the old veterans at WCW, and they always wrote DDP in that category, and I'm sitting there just like, wait a minute, he was WCW from day one. Like, he's actually been there. So to me, he never really fit in that category. So I guess because he was just old, they just said that. But to me, I was like, no, DDP. By the time they gave DDP the belt, it was too late.
Right,
like
exactly.
that ship had sailed.
Trust me, I was a kid who was 1,000,000% obsessed with DDP at the time, so I remember.
You're still obsessed with him.
Yeah, I'm just not a kid anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I'm not going to take his advice and go out and buy a $50,000 hyperbaric chamber because I have nowhere to put it in my house, even if I had 50 grand for one.
Well,
but
before we go any further on this episode, I'd like to ask you: have you checked out? Because I figured you'd be all over this podcast. Have you heard him and Jake the Snake?
Here's the thing, I actually have not. So one of the things I forgot to mention at the start of the episode is Superhero Homies, which I listen to a lot. I have been one of their hosts, Kevin, has actually he had been out of town, and so for like a month and a half, I was actually guest hosting that podcast with Ace,
Yeah.
and so I have not had a ton of time. About the only things I've really been listening to, wrestling wise, is I've been catching My World, and then I catch parts of Cornette if he's doing, if he's talking about something I'm really interested in, like when Vince got resigned. Like when Vince resigned, obviously Cornette was like the main person I wanted to hear their take on it.
Yes, I
You know.
did too. And I love it when he talks about old school wrestling.
Yeah, but I have not had a chance to listen to any of the DDP and Jake podcasts, unfortunately.
Well, I have checked it out, man. And dude, I'm telling you, if you listen to that, you would be like, fuck every single podcast. I'm just going to listen to this one.
Right. Well, I'll have to give it a shot. I definitely intend to at some point.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Um, but that being said, man, going back to Goldberg, they botched him at the end there, but WCW, and they covered this obviously. Which, by the way, really, with the whole dramatic two TVs in the center of the ring, give me a break.
Right.
Come on, like some of that stuff. Even when Bischoff was explaining his story, I remember where I was. I was on the LA freeway, and they had to show a shot of the LA freeway in the 90s as like I'm sitting there just like this has nothing to do with the story. Just tell the like,
Right. There's literally a podcast where Eric Bischoff just talks for 2 hours, and people like it. So just put the camera on Bischoff and let him talk.
that's what I'm saying. Like I like just some of that stuff, like, oh my God, it was just so over dramatic. But I will say it was interesting seeing the Time Warner merger in there, and Bischoff saying, well, which is exactly what happened, by the way.
Right.
That one of the other cultures is going to completely eat the other. And that's
It's
exactly what happened.
it's super timely because that's happening at Time Warner right now.
Yeah.
As we speak, Warner Brothers was bought out by Discovery and is having the exact same thing happen to them right now.
Exactly. It's one of the worst mergers in history is the TBS and Time Warner, I'm sorry, the Time Warner and Turner merger,
Yeah.
because not and I've said this, man, because you mentioned the Braves earlier. Well, here was the thing: the Braves at one point in 2000 and 2001 and 1999, really for 10 years, but those last 2 years, they had an all-star team. Like, we had one of the best teams ever assembled.
Right.
Why do
Yeah.
you think all of that changed? It's because Time Warner came in and overpowered Turner, and they said, we don't really want to pay for the Braves anymore. Can
Right.
I mention this to everyone? I think I've said this on, it might have been this podcast that I've said this. But at one point, the Atlanta Braves were the most watched television show on Turner.
Right.
Even bigger than WCW, and they were also one of the biggest sports teams in the world because they had that prime time slot on Turner. No other team had that.
And it took them almost 20 years to kind of dig back out and be. They are now almost as popular now as they were then. But
Yes,
it took them another World Series win and almost 2 decades to undo the damage that was done by that merger.
yes. A lot of people forget to talk about that when they talk about sports, but that was huge.
Right. Um, Wrapping this one up, I did like how they talked about, the failed WrestleMania 20 match. Although I got to be honest, and this is one of the things that nobody does talk about, is I really liked the actual build up to that match. The match itself just sucked
Yeah, I agree. I thought
because
the
neither of them cared.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's kind of hard to care when 20,000 people are booing you.
That's true. Um, but yeah, I mean, and we all know the story about the comeback because it didn't happen that long ago, and we were there for it. But I'd say overall, man, this is one of my favorite episodes of this A&E biography series so far, hands down.
Yeah, it has been mine as well. We actually saw a different side of Goldberg. We saw him being remorseful. We saw him being humble. We saw him being, just emotional at times. I really liked this one. I really liked how in depth they went with certain stories. I'm glad that they went in depth with the Bret Hart thing. I'm glad that they went in depth with, him almost losing his arm and actually almost killing himself in the process. But just, man, I really like this one. It made me want to go back and watch those WCW days because I don't care. I was not a fan of his WWE run, really either one of them. I like the Survivor Series comeback thing, but overall, the time that I remember Goldberg was when I was a kid and that WCW run. And like I said, say what you want to. I understand people like 5-star matches. I understand all of this and I get it. But you gonna go out and have a 5-star match and it ain't gonna mean shit if you don't get a reaction like that. And guess what? That's what a lot of modern wrestling is missing. I answer me this: when was the last time you saw a crowd go nuts for a title win like that? And, like, I'll wait.
Like the when he beat Lesnar.
Yeah, actually, that
Um,
was it.
it's been a while.
But
Yeah, I
not
mean,
even, but not even Goldberg. I'm talking like just in general. Paul Heyman said it best. He said there were not people who were smart marks that night. There were not people who were half and half. No, there were 40,000 people, and they lost their minds when that happened. And here was the thing: they had seen him twice that night already. He came out and did a thing with Scott Hall in the middle of the show, and it's only really because it's 3 hours long. You have to fill it with something. And that didn't even hurt the main event. It just helped it more.
yeah. I mean, the only thing that's come close to when Goldberg beat Lesnar for the belt in I think 2016 would have to probably be Bianca Belair's win. That's the only thing that comes close.
You know what? I'll throw another one in there. Kofi Kingston's win.
That's true. Yeah, the Kofi win for
Because
sure.
that pop when he won was enormous.
Yeah. Um, and here's the thing, man, is and not to veer too much into modern product, but I think
Yeah.
that's probably one of the issues with AEW is who the next champion is going to be is so telegraphed at this point that I don't think they've had that moment yet where somebody really went apeshit for a title change because I think we all knew that Punk was going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them, right? I mean, we've all known who was going to win all of them. So I think they actually have an opportunity now going forward with Punk, with him having such a strong record of us not knowing who could beat him. Um, so maybe they can create that moment.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think if the only way that you could is if you had someone like Darby Allin.
Yeah, I mean, just somebody that they don't suspect, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, man, wrestling's all about getting. You even said it best. It's about creating those moments. Well, people who were there that night at the Georgia Dome, they'll never forget that moment. I mean, that was
Right.
that was an incredible moment. And here's the thing, and I'm very glad that they did not go into this, because we can beat a dead horse on this all day long. People say, well, they should have saved it for a pay-per-view. They shouldn't have done it on Nitro. They shouldn't have done it with a week
No,
build up.
it was perfect.
I mean, you could say what you want to, but guess what? WCW and Bischoff figured this out a long time ago about WCW, which is, I think, why wrestling people who ran it never got it. It wasn't a wrestling company. It was a television production.
Right.
And you have to think TV. And that's why that's another thing that I could get into with the modern product, but that would, mean we'd have to do a whole episode on it. But man, like I said, Goldberg was very instrumental in my childhood with wrestling fandom. I loved him. I also loved at the time, there was this big talk of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Goldberg. Like, could that dream match ever happen? Kind of thing. It never did, but it didn't need to. I'm okay with that. But like I said,
it would not have been good. Yeah, having him against The Rock was brilliant.
Oh no, I agree, because The Rock could actually match up with them.
But with Austin, I think their styles would have conflicted so much.
Yep.
And they also, couldn't really risk Austin getting hurt.
Oh, yeah.
At that point in time when he came in, it was to the point where Austin was exclusively working with people he was very comfortable with.
Yep.
That knew, he had limitations and needed to be protected. Limitations, by the way, that he doesn't seem to have anymore since he, stole the show at fucking WrestleMania in the main event this year. But,
he took a suplex on the concrete.
Yeah.
Like, that was when I was just like, I don't ever want to hear that Stone Cold is a beat up old man or anything. He just took a suplex on the concrete from Kevin Owens.
Like, Austin has said several times that he could come back and do 2 years full time if he wanted to and needed to, but he doesn't.
He doesn't have to.
No, his career is legendary. End of story. There's no need. That being said, I do want to talk about the last part of our little trilogy here today. Probably won't spend as much time on this one because I know that neither of us are huge Bella fans. But I did have to say I really enjoyed this documentary though as a documentary, because it talked about things from their childhood that we really hadn't seen before and got into some incredibly deep stuff. They talked about how they grew up in a household where their father was a drug user and was very violent, and I would have never have guessed that. They always came across to me, I guess because of the way we were introduced to them, as them having this sort of silver spoon, sort of privileged childhood or whatever. But it turns out that is not the case at all. And that just kind of goes to show, you can't really assume that kind of thing about somebody.
I had actually heard that about them. I mean, I've never heard the full story or anything like that, but I had actually heard that actually they had a rough upbringing. So I mean that's really, and which, I mean, that's what these documentaries are all about. That they're all about going through the person's life and how they ended up to the point that they did. Yeah, I like that. I need to go back and watch that. And like I said, I haven't seen a lot of this episode, so you're mostly going to be taking the reins on this one.
That's okay. I thought that it was, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. They did say that their, parents had them when they were 19, which I think about when I was 19 and I shouldn't be responsible for another human being right now. Certainly not when I was 19.
Hey man, that sometimes you don't get that option if you want to have fun. You know what they say?
I had plenty of fun. Never found myself in that situation. So, wrap it before you tap it, folks.
Yeah. But
But
hey, I mean, they had that, but people can say what they want to about the Bellas, and I know I have, and several others. But I mean, they've had a storied career.
yeah, I mean, with them, I respect them a lot for, um, you know, their willingness to get into the business, the amount they worked to get into a locker room that was not receptive of new people. Because this is one of the things they talked about in the documentary is back when they broke in, there was like one segment on TV that had women in it per night,
Yep.
and that was it. And it was usually whoever had the title and whoever was coming after them, and that was it.
Yep.
And it was usually like Trish and Lita or Victoria or, I think Lita was on her way out and Trish was too, kind of by the time they started coming up. So, you had like Natalia, Victoria, like those kind of people, but the locker room was not receptive to them. Everybody was fighting for that one coveted spot, and everybody else was eye candy back then.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. So I mean, I can totally understand it from their view.
And they came in and worked their asses off, and I got to respect them for that. And then they left when they weren't being used properly, which, it's one of those things where it's like nobody, and when I say nobody, I mean the internet wrestling community as a whole, right? Nobody said that kind of shit about like Brock Lesnar or Stone Cold, but like when the Bellas do it, or like when Sasha and Naomi did it, there's all this like negative kind of press around it. And it's like nobody's obligated to re-sign with a place that they don't want to be.
Yeah, that was the thing, even with the Goldberg thing, which is why I brought up this dude. And I'm not sure if I said this before, right? But one of the things that I get so frustrated with the internet, with social media, and wrestling fans, it seems like I heard this statement and I never really got it until I actually like started to see it, which is, dude, it seems like nobody hates wrestling more than wrestling fans. Like
It does seem like that, doesn't it?
like it's like, dude, you're never gonna hear whenever John Cena appears on Access Hollywood, right? You are
Right.
never gonna hear someone be like, well, WWE booked this and this was booked terribly, blah 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 blah, all this stuff. No, they don't give a shit about that. They're just promoting the product. But
Right.
then you go here and these people who are like, yeah, we're wrestling fans. And then all they do is just shit on the product. And I'm sitting there just like, this is why casual fans cannot get into wrestling, because they're just like, what are y'all talking about?
Well, I don't know if that's the only reason, but it's certainly not helping. It's like
True.
I,
Well,
I,
that's why I said this is one of the reasons.
I'll use this example. Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author. I'm a huge fan of all his books. Anytime I talk to someone and I find out that they read books and that's a thing that they do on a regular basis, I go, hey, if you haven't tried these out, you should really try them. They're fantastic. I don't go on for 30 minutes about how it used to be awesome, but now it isn't. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Word of mouth goes a long way. And while I do feel that way about wrestling, there's a lot that goes into the issues with it today, and a toxic fan base is part of that. And I don't think toxic means, you're not obligated to like something, right? But when the conversation is overwhelmed by that,
Yes.
then that's when it starts to become a problem.
Yes, like I can't stand, man, AEW will put on Dynamite, right? Then about 45 minutes later on well, actually not even that, like 5 minutes later, YouTube, now there is What Cultural, and it has, or What Cultural Pro Wrestling, and it's the ups and downs of Dynamite or Monday Night Raw, and I'm just like, what was so like? Was it good? I don't understand. Was it good? Was it bad? Why does it matter? Kind of thing. Like, I don't know, just some of that stuff. And, the Bellas definitely were victims of that. Like they got a lot of shit from people. And here's the thing. I actually thought that when Nikki Bella had the title, she actually had a really good run.
She did. They actually, think both. Uh, well, Brie didn't have as good of a run. She was always better when she was chasing.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. But I thought though that they actually became good workers.
I agree. And when they came back, they were always like, it's like they kind of got there too early, right? Because they were there in the Divas era and they were associated heavily with that.
Yeah.
But honestly, if they were 5, 6 years younger and had come in, 5 years later than they did, they would have been a huge part of the women's revolution.
They would have, but I kind of glad that they got their just due for the women's revolution as well.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, and I really think that what they were able to do as entertainment stars in general, with them having total divas, which that may not have been the thing that every wrestling fan wanted to see, but it drew in an audience of people who weren't wrestling fans,
Yep.
and then those people started watching WWE.
Yep.
So it was brilliant.
I was just about to say that because that's how you target another audience.
Yes, Tony Khan could learn a thing about this.
Well, this is very true. But because I'll say this, that thing was on the E network, right?
Yep.
And here was the thing. I said this when it first launched. I said, look, people can say what they want to about it, but there's a show that was on E Network, and it was a reality show. I think it was the Playboy Bunnies. It was the girls who lived at the mansions, but I think it only followed like 3 of them. I don't know. I did not watch the show. I swear to God, I did not. But my mother did watch that show. She is not that interested in Playboy Bunnies, let's put it that way. But that's a reality show that she got behind. And I sat there, I was like, when Total Divas was announced, I was like, I guarantee you that's going to become one of their most popular shows on the E network. Guess what? It did.
Yeah, and then the Bellas got their own spinoff, and it was a hit too. So
yeah. And by the way, out of everyone I could have seen marrying someone, I could not have picked Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella being a couple.
it was so weird, especially with him being on the reality show, and it's just so like just opposed to his whole like personality and how he presents himself.
And
It was crazy.
dude, I've told you this. My favorite match of all time is Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness.
Yeah, we covered that match.
Well, you watch that match and you watch his ROH stuff, and you're like, that guy's married to Brie Bella.
Yeah. It's crazy how it works. I mean, it really is, and one of the things the documentary highlighted and that we saw over the years is how Brie and Nikki are two completely different people.
Yeah,
And it's like that's always been the case, but people kind of assume about twins that it's like, oh yeah, they're going to be very alike and everything else just because they look alike.
Yeah.
So.
But I will say this. Now I've got to go back and watch this and actually like finish this episode.
It was really good. I would encourage anyone to watch it. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. So yeah. That being said, man, that wraps up the first 3 of this season's A&E biographies, man. So next up on the slate we've got Kurt Angle, which I've seen already.
Oh, I've just started watching that and I can't stop watching it. I'll say that. I love Kurt Angle, by the way.
Me too. He was one of the 2 competitors in my favorite match of all time.
Well, yes, that, and I will say this. I have not finished this episode. I'll be interested though to see if they mention a certain run in his career. if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. They don't go deep into it, but it is mentioned. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, but they don't go into it.
Of
You know they
course
don't.
they won't. But that,
Well, they don't have the rights for the footage, so
oh, well, okay. All right.
yeah,
I guess that deal ran its course.
yeah. As far as I know, now I might be wrong, but I watched this episode right when it came out, so it's been a little while since I've seen it. So I haven't. I don't remember it perfectly. I'm gonna watch it again before we review it, and I got to watch the Luger episode and the DX episode. But I'm interested in all three. So
Well, so spoiler alert on the Luger one. You hyped up the Goldberg episode for me. I'm going to hype this one up for you. I was a fan of this one.
okay, all right.
I,
Well,
this one was really good, man. It was. Like, to me, this one was even better than the Goldberg episode. Yes.
wow, that's high praise. So now I might have to check it out tonight.
Yes, I'm telling you, it's been one of my favorite ones. I'll say this: I'm not, I'm not that much looking forward to the DX one because what has been said about that hasn't already been said.
Same with Undertaker, right? I mean, there's possible though that they could give us some kind of behind the scenes stuff, but we'll see.
We'll see. And I wonder, how much they're going to cover of their first run, and then how much they're going to cover of the second run of them. So, I guess I'll be interested to seeing that one. But there's still a couple of them that I'm really looking forward to. There's also another one that's pretty good that you should check out: WWE Rivalries.
I won't. I just won't do it. I don't have the time.
Oh well,
Just being honest, my schedule. I've seen the rivalry stuff out there, and I'm like, oh man, that'd be really cool. But it's just like I only have so much time, and
I feel you on that.
I got like 4 different TV shows I'm watching right now, and I was not planning on watching House of the Dragon, but here we are. So that one's just been involuntarily added to the slate because I was prepared. Typically, I go into something wanting to like it always, right? And then it
Right.
doesn't always work out. With this, I went in prepared to hate it. I actually really wanted to because then I wouldn't have to watch it. But now I really like it, so now I got to watch it. So yeah, it's unfortunate. But that being said, man, it was definitely nice to sit back down again and do this.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
One, I'm gonna go back and finish this Bella episode. I'm now actually really curious to see what's said about it, and I'll give my full final thoughts on it on next episode.
Okay.
The Undertaker episode, like I watched. I didn't finish that one because, like I said, I knew what was going to be said in it. There's nothing else I can really hear about it that I didn't already know. But the Goldberg episode was just really good, I thought. But again, we've been talking about it on this show, and I want to get your final thoughts on this because, again, you know there's a lot of guys who are going to be like, well, you need to be a wrestling fan, and wrestling fans think that you need to be a wrestling fan in order to be a pro wrestler. But some of the biggest names in history were not wrestling marks. They might have watched, like Hulk Hogan might have watched some wrestling, but he wasn't huge wrestling fan like there is now, kind of thing. Even one of the best in modern wrestling, AJ Styles, he was somewhat a wrestling fan. He did not watch it all the time, though. He didn't
Right.
even really want to pursue it at first. And then he figured it out, and he was like, I can do this, actually. And so I'm sitting there just like, I've often thought the same thing, that you've got to be a wrestling fan in order to be in this, but is that the case?
To an extent, I think it's the opposite. It's not that you can't be both, right? Like you can come in loving it and still do a good job with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's harder for that person to separate reality and their gimmick and their character. I mean, I hate to keep, I hate to keep doubling back to him, but Jonathan Gresham, man, if he wrestled like he was 5 feet tall and did an underdog style, if he did sort of like Taz used to, Taz is a smaller guy,
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, this is a smaller guy, and you can beat the shit out of him. But if he catches you in a submission in the wrong way, you're done. If he wrestled his matches like that, then he would, I think, would be a big star and probably be on a main program somewhere. But he doesn't wrestle like that. He cosplays as a person who's 6 feet tall, and he's not. And when he wrestled Claudio for the Ring of Honor title,
Uh-huh.
it looked ridiculous. I mean, it looked like when what's his name, the guy that used to be with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus.
Marco Stunt.
Yeah, he looked like Marco Stunt in the ring with Claudio.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, man, and I mean, not to take anything away from the rest, because obviously, the guys that did like wrestling, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, they had very successful careers. But that's because they got both. They got from both standpoints. But I'm just saying, some of the biggest names in history were not wrestling marks when they started. Kurt Angle, even that when we're going to cover that.
Right.
Goldberg, Goldberg, say what you want to about him. He might not have had a 5-star match. In fact, the only 5-star match that he might have came close to was with Diamond Dallas Page, and everyone had to see it on free television the next night because it got cut out early.
Right.
But, it doesn't matter. If you cannot become an attraction, it doesn't matter how many 5-star matches you have. You have to be something that's going to draw money. And
Right.
Goldberg drew money back in 1998.
And again in 2003 and again in 2016. So
yeah, he did.
So, well, man, on that note, we have been running a little long here, so we will go ahead and wrap this one up. But it has been really good to have you back in the virtual studio here.
Yeah, man, it's been fun being back, man. I've had a blast talking about wrestling and podcasts again.
Yes, sir. Well, with that being said, we've got nothing but more to come. Tune in soon for our House of the Dragon review, and then Stovall and I will be right back here probably in the next couple of weeks to do part 2 of these. Mm-hmm. But for now, this has been an Involved Review.